How do you build that resume so that it is in line with your personal brand? Remember, I don't care if you're in finance, technology, or marketing, you're a salesperson and a marketer when you're in the job search. And you have to figure out what is your job goal, what is your target, and figure out what your tagline is, which is really your elevator pitch, and how do all of your marketing materials make up the right brand campaign for you. You have to start thinking of yourself as a product that you're pitching out to a target audience that you've selected based on your job goals. So that means having a resume that's in line with that image, with whatever that goal is. It's not just a laundry list of what you've done. Your resume is always a carefully crafted tool. Think of it is like your pitch deck if you're in marketing. The idea is that it is designed to tell the viewer exactly who you are, what you're great at, and what you're targeting, and really stay within those guardrails. You may have done a lot of other cool things that have nothing to do with what you're currently targeting. It doesn't need to be on there. You only get 2 pages. And if you're entry level, it's 1 page. Literally 2 pages. Okay, so one thing you want to remember is write to the future. And really what this means is you cannot craft your resume unless you've thought about your job goals. Because every word that you're choosing to put in there is carefully chosen because you're making sure that whatever job you're trying to get, you've integrated the buzzwords from that job description. I'm going to wait 1 second while they do that because I know no one can hear me. Okay. Whether you're going to write your own resume or you're going to have a professional do it, which frankly I advise, not just because there are services, but because I wouldn't write my own. There are 3 things I think no one should ever do. You don't write your own will, you don't do your own taxes, you don't write your own resume. It's too personal, and frankly, there is so much nitty-gritty stuff in here that you never need to understand as a professional. Only I need to understand it because that's what I do for a living. But if you're going to write it for yourself, before you write it, you have to identify your job goals, and then you have to find some jobs that are actually of interest to you. So look for jobs, and I don't care if they're in other places of the country and you're never going to go there. What you're looking for are job descriptions that match what you're trying to do, and get a few of them. I would say 3 to 5. I'm a printer out kind of person, even though I know we're very mobile. Do it on your iPad. I would have a pad and paper. I would print them out. You want to highlight and identify what are the buzz terms and the keywords, both the fluffy stuff, detail-oriented, task-oriented, management, as well as Java. So you really want to consider what are the buzzwords that commonly show up in every job description, and if they actually apply to you, you need to get those in your resume. That's really important because you're going against both a human and electronic gatekeeper. And the electronic gatekeeper, which is known as an ATS, it's been programmed to search for certain terms and experience, and if your resume doesn't have it in it, you're never going to even be passed to a human. So it doesn't matter if you said it a different way, you need to integrate those same words into your resume if you want to make it past. Everyone says they put out applications and they never hear back. It's probably because a human never even looked at it. It's because it never made it past the computer screen. Okay. We did an eye tracking study back in, I think, sometime last year. We looked at a lot of different recruiters and we tracked their eyes while they were looking at resumes because we wanted to know what do they look at and how long they spend on each resume before they say, I want to look at it closer, or no way, and no way, Jose. We asked the recruiters, how long do you think you look at a resume? And they said a minute. I look at each resume for about a minute before I dump it or say, okay, I'll look at it more. 6 seconds. They, on average, looked at a resume for 6 seconds. I can't even read my name in 6 seconds, so I don't know how they're doing that. They're literally dodging professional title, current experience, years of experience, education. They bounce to 6 different points and they're done. But even before you get to that, you first have to pass this anonymous digital gatekeeper. And that's really important. I mean, what I'm really here to tell you about is that, yes, you have to make sure that it's going to be good for a human, but you first have to get it to a human, and that means understanding what is the technology doing and interpreting on the back end so that your resume is crafted to actually help you. Okay, so again, run a search for jobs that you're qualified for. I don't care if they're not in the right location or even the right industry. You want to get, well, industry would be ideal. Print them out and start looking for the buzzwords. This is an example, right? This is a job I found on the ladders. These are the words I pulled out of that job description. I know it's small, so I apologize, but goal-oriented, forecasting, problem-solving, technical knowledge, recruiting and training, team management, leadership, etc. and so forth. These are all things that are must-haves in that job description. If these are things I'm finding throughout the other job descriptions, these are words I want to incorporate in. These are other things to consider, all right? Certain types of font actually get completely scrambled when you submit it. So if you're using the wrong font, there may be a chance that your resume got all switched around, and for that reason, the recruiter would have to put it back together to look at it, and guess what? They're not going to do it. They're looking at a resume for 6 seconds. If they have to do any work, they're not going to look at it. So these are some common ones. These are not the only ones, so don't panic. But these are ones I recommend. New Times Roman is perfectly fine, so don't panic because you don't see it. It's just that it's so common, I don't recommend it because everyone has it, so I want my resume to look different. So these are the ones that I prefer, and they have different looks and feels, so you look for the one that appeals to you, frankly. Always include one email address. That's professional and only yours, not that you share with a partner or your family. One phone number, and I recommend it being your cell phone because you need to be able to respond on the go. And you also need to control who picks it up, when, and what that voicemail sounds like. You don't want your kid picking up the phone and screwing up your recruiter call. They don't know any better, or a roommate, or whoever it is. And your LinkedIn profile. We know that 86% of recruiters are going to search for you online, whether you gave them permission or not when you submit an application. 86%. That's how many admitted in this survey that was done this past summer. I think it's actually really low. I think that's higher. I think a lot more are doing it and not admitting to it. You want to make sure, especially if your name is common, you want to provide them with the link. You don't want them searching for you and confusing you with the other Joe Smith that has some really bad stuff out there about themselves. Also keep in mind, however you represent your name on your resume is how you need to represent it on your LinkedIn profile, on any other professional online accounts that you have. So if you use the middle initial in one, you should use the middle initial in all. And that's a good way if you have a common name and you're afraid of being confused with other people. Remember that size does matter in this case. 2 pages. You get 2 pages, which is why you don't want a jack-of-all-trades resume. You want your resume to only pinpoint the accomplishments and the experience that are relevant to what you're doing. Yes, you're supposed to include most of your jobs, but you need to slant them and decide how much you're going to put about each depending on how much it supports your job goals or not. And if you had a job that was very broad that allowed you to do a lot of things, you zero in on whatever is most relevant to what you're looking for. You can mention that you did this and that, but the accomplishments should all really be about how does it impact or how is it related to your job goals. Always use reverse chronological order. You start with what you've done most recently and you go backwards. And typically what you've done most recently is the most fleshed out part. Now granted, if you're trying to get back into something you did before, well that's when you start playing games, right? You shrink something, expand others, but this is traditionally how you do. Obviously there are modifications based on your circumstances. Be really consistent, and this drives me nuts. I'm so OCD, and it drives me crazy when people, I used a dot here, and a line here, and a check mark here, or I changed fonts halfway through, or I did the dates this way in one place and this way in another. Just be consistent, and frankly, you're gonna stare at it so many times, you need to let somebody else look at it. And I actually recommend somebody who is not involved in your industry, a family member, take a look at your resume when you're done. One, look for grammatical errors and look for this consistency stuff because you've looked at it too much to really remember and see all those things. But the other thing is, can someone outside your line of work look at your resume and know what you're great at and what you're trying to do? That's the test. If somebody outside your group can look at this and say, oh, this is what they want to do, and oh wow, then they have the experience to back it up. That's the key. And that takes a lot of time, frankly. Another thing, because I was critiquing a friend's resume last night, never use first person. You do not use first person on a resume. Everything's in third person. Be careful of your tenses too. If you're currently in that job, it's present. Everything else needs to be in past tense. So little nuances. It's interesting because I'm going to get into it in another session, but when looking at social media profiles, I think it was, actually I have a cheat sheet, 70% of recruiters turned down a candidate because of something they saw about them online that was bad, and poor grammar was worse than you boozing it up in a photo. They care about those little things. Don't abbreviate. Be very cognizant of those things. Don't do anything that makes it seem that you're lazy. You're not lazy, you thought that was a professional. Don't abbreviate. The other thing is make sure that if, say, you've worked in customer relationship management systems, that you also have CRM in parentheses next to it. Always try and represent both the acronym as well as the long term. If a CPA or an MBA or a PhD or some other certification, Six Sigma Black Belt, if that's incredibly important to the job that you're pursuing, after your name on the top of your resume, put a comma and put that acronym. And do the same thing on all your professional profiles. Those certifications end up on the second page. Don't let a lazy recruiter think you don't have the experience because they didn't look close enough to notice that it's at the bottom of your resume, where it belongs, frankly. So make sure if you have a certification that's very important, put it after your name. You don't have to spell it out, just acronym. Okay, things to avoid. More than 15 years of experience on your resume. Nobody cares what you did 15 years ago. It's not considered relevant to what you're doing right now. Recruiters on average want to know what have you been doing over the last 3 to 6 years that's relevant to what you're trying to do now. So they're really, and I know that's a huge, some people go, oh, I'm trying to switch back to something I did 20 years ago. It's difficult, and I know it's difficult, but be very cognizant. And that's when there are different formats for that type of thing. That's a different, there are different ways to play with it. But you don't really want more than 15 years of experience on there. It's too far back, and frankly, then you have age discrimination to worry about, which is not fair and not right, and I know, excuse my language, it sucks, but I don't have control over it, so you've got to play by the rules. Same thing with college graduation or certification dates. You don't need them if they're more than 10 years old. You just need to put on that you've actually graduated. Someone said, yeah, I've been in the field for 30 years. I'm not going to put my college degree. They know I've graduated. No, they don't. It has to be on your resume. It's at the bottom of your resume because, frankly, your experience is much more important. Entry level has their education at top. They're the only ones. Everyone else has it at the bottom. Your experience is the most important thing. That's the selling point. Your education is just one more thing to put on there. Don't include a photo of yourself. Again, I know LinkedIn, actually you're 40% more likely to get clicked on in LinkedIn if you have a photo. If the photo's not the right photo, it's doing you a disservice, and frankly, photos do not belong on resumes, they belong on CVs if you are applying internationally. That is not something you need for a US job for a US company. When I say old school fonts, you kind of know it when you see it, but it's that really horrible, it's the one that your kid or even you in college would use when you needed to like extend the size of a paper, and you make it like double font size and you double, spaced. And it's that horrible, ugly, I can't even remember the name of it because I've like banished it from my mind. But again, stick to these fonts and you'll be fine. So you don't really have to worry about it. Don't use color, even if you're creative, please don't use color. Save the color for your portfolio. If you're applying to a professional place, they want to see your work on your website designed well, and you can showcase it on Twitter or on Pinterest or however you want to do that if you're creative. It doesn't belong on your resume. Your resume should be something, because frankly, oftentimes you're submitting a resume through an ATS system and it's not going to matter, they're never going to see it. So be careful with that. Dense blocks of text. No one's going to read 2 paragraphs. They spend 6 seconds looking at your resume, so no dense paragraphs. Everything's 3 to 5 sentences or bullets, to be honest. But that leads me to my other one, and I normally call it death by bullets. If you have your job title and the company name and then everything is a bullet, and a lot of people have this, it's very common, because that's just, you list out what you've done. Bullets are saved for your braggable accomplishments that are relevant to what you're trying to do. And if you're entry level or newer to the workforce and you don't have these great quantifiable accomplishments, where are your contributions? Where were the big things you were a part of, even if you don't have numbers to back it up? Your bullet points should always be, if possible, quantifiable. And if you can't quantify them, think about how did you make things faster, more efficient? How did you cut costs, build revenue, improve customer service? How many projects did you do? Did you bring them in on time or under budget? You're always looking for the bragging points, and that's what you bullet. If everything's bulleted, everything's important, which means nothing's important. So normally you have a company name, location, years of experience, a line that describes that company. You can't assume everyone knows what every company is. I know brand names, yes, everyone knows those, but frankly, the junior level HR coordinator may have no clue, even if they're working at a company that's really thick into that industry. So always have a one-liner. And if you're switching industries, when you're putting that one-liner in about the company, instead of playing up the industry, you play up the size of the company or where it's located or how much money it brings in. If you're trying to stay in that industry, you want to, again, really emphasize the fact that I was working in this industry already. Again, it's all about how you play with it based on what your goals are. Then you have, I'd say anywhere from 2 to 5 lines in a paragraph form that describe your roles and responsibilities. This is, what am I responsible for doing? And if you don't know how to phrase it, cheat. Go look at job descriptions. Look at a job that has the exact same job title you've done and start stealing sentences from their job description and put them together. Then you're guaranteed to have the right buzzwords in there, right? And then you save 3 to 5 bullets, or if it's a smaller job or farther back in the future, 1 to 2, that describe your accomplishments. And that's the overall format. This last one at the bottom I think is really important because I don't think a lot of people know this. If you're just printing out your resume and handing it to someone, it's fine if you actually use the header and footer. Obviously, it's a nice way to organize your document. If you're submitting it electronically, and that's anytime they make you upload it to a website, the header and footer gets scrambled. You do not want to put your contact information in that header and footer spot. You want it at the top of the page, but you don't want to actually double click into the header footer part of a Word doc to put it in. Does that make sense? Yeah? So this, I know it's an eye chart, but I wanted to kind of give you a visual of what I'm going for. And this is someone with only about 7 years experience, so it's only about 1.5 pages. Again, if you've been in your industry for 3 or more years, you should have a more intermediate level resume. If you are a senior professional, yours should be in this format. If you're entry level, your education goes at top. A couple things to note. You guys can see the mouse, right? Okay. Don't write professional summary at the top. Use that real estate to actually put what your summary is. Don't make them guess. That's where you want to basically show it's a combination of what you do and what you're looking for. And it gets more vague if you're trying to switch, and it gets more specific if you're looking for the next level up. So it could be senior sales professional. It could be sports marketing senior professional. If you're a VP or above, it's executive. If you're director, it's senior professional. If you're intermediate, it's professional. If you're entry level, it's entry level professional. But the idea is use some words to actually show this is who I am and this is what I'm targeting. And then that paragraph right here, this is where all the fluffy words that I found in all my job descriptions that they're looking for, this is where I can bake those suckers in, because where am I going to put detail-oriented in the rest of my resume, let's be honest. But you need to bake it in, that's where you bake it in. Also, this fun little section right here, everyone should have a core competencies section, or you can call it an area of expertise. This is also where you bake in words. This is where you bake in specialties of yours where, because you want it, yes, it's probably going to come out in other parts of your resume, but you want it in there more than once. It's like getting search results on Google. The more times things are mentioned, the higher up you go in results. So don't put it in for the sake, and people have asked me, no, you do not put words in white font hidden in the background to trick the system. Because guess what? They find out about that and they get really angry at you, so don't do that. I know, because I had a job seeker who tried it, and I was like, no, they don't like that. Now, I gave you a lot of information. I'm telling you right now, I'd never write my own resume, and I do it for a living. I'll do anyone else's. I won't do my own. I wouldn't know where to start. If you sign up for a free trial, which they have cards going around, there's only 1,000 for the whole day, so I say, scout people out, and no, I don't have any, and I have no idea where they are. They just put me here. But if you get a free trial, you get a free critique. You'll have a certified resume writer critique your resume, and guess what? They actually tell you the truth. Because if it's good, they'll try and sell you a cover letter. If it's bad, they'll try and sell you a resume. That's how you know if it's good or not. If they try and sell you a cover letter, you're like, yes, my resume was awesome. If they try and sell you a resume, it means that it really does. Because frankly, some that I wanted to rewrite, they said, oh, they're pretty good. I was more nitty-gritty than they were about it. So they really are great about that. You can always buy one. If you are already a premium member, you have a free critique. You've just never used it. So definitely You can call or use this email address and say, okay, I'm a premium member and I never got my critique. How do I do that? And they'll help you out. Because to be honest, you're not supposed to be an expert in this stuff. You're not going to remember all these nuances, but these will be up online latest by Monday, these PowerPoints.